Hey, folks, welcome back to the Living in the Virtue of Your Strengths podcast. My name is Matt Ingold. I'm your co-host. I'm your host. My co-host is in the other room for the Catholic Coaching Podcast. But today we're talking about strengths. Specifically, we are diving in, wait for it, the signature theme of discipline. So we're going to be very disciplined on this podcast here today. And my voice is sounding extra deep. It's because I have extra allergies today. So we'll just get past that. It's better than some of the audio malfunctions we had on other episodes. Okay. So what's our goal here today? We're not just exploring the signature themes like any other podcast. We're looking at these themes. How do they show up viciously? How do they show up virtuously? How can we deploy these themes? And what are the mindsets fueling the way that these themes show up in our lives that are building up the kingdom of God versus taking the bricks off of the temple? Okay, so we're going to be looking at the talent of discipline here today. Got some high discipline people on the call. I see some threes. We don't have any ones on here. I know my wife is at 34. It's at 9 for me, but we got some people across the board from our straw poll in the beginning. So everybody's going to be contributing, as we always do in this podcast, to really understanding the nuances of this talent and how it can be really incorporate it into your team in a very virtuous, life-giving way. All right. So what are some of the things that the discipline talent brings? So the person that is, we're going again to our baseball card that we get from Gallup. First thing, I am, so that I am statement, an efficient manager of limited resources. Interesting. I am an efficient manager of limited resources. I will, what are they doing? I will plan in advance and then follow the plan. I bring, what's their contribution? I bring precision and detail orientation. I need, what's that requirement they need to be able to show up in that place of contribution? A structured and organized environment. What are the things that discipline loves? Things that are organized and orderly. What do they hate? Chaos and confusion and flying by the seat of one's pants. Going off script, so to speak, like I just did. Metaphor, image, having their ducks in a row. And then finally, that barrier label, may be resistant to change. Okay. We also have like maybe resistant to change with that. Okay. So I'd like to jump into our word picture. So we got some people that are watching on YouTube and we have some people that are just listening in. So let me explain this to the people that are listening. The first picture that I have, so we're exploring here, what drives the person with discipline? I've got a picture of a train conductor. The reason I put that on there is like you think of trains always running on schedule, at least they're supposed to. And so that's kind of that discipline, rigid expectation, meeting expectation. The train shows up and they got the conductor that's holding everybody to the timeline. I think of the person with high discipline as doing repeating processes. So have a little icon of like these gears and these arrows kind of almost like going in a bit of a circle or a square. And so it's just, there's one process that they repeat again and again and again. So I see the person that's with discipline, they want to follow a process. It brings them to some sort of predictable result. I got an image of the President's own Marine Corps silent drill team. You want to see discipline and precision, go check that out at some point in your life. All right, I've got a calendar and a schedule icon that's here. Because again, discipline, you have boxes, you have places to put things with discipline, and you do that again because it serves that predictability that you're looking for, predictability, making sure that you have enough time to get done whatever it is that you need to do to end up at that predictable outcome. I got a cookbook here as well. You follow a cookbook, it's hard to go wrong, though I'm sure many of us would disagree there. There's a pattern that we have for just kind of like doing some sort of like stitching or making a dress or something like that. So there's a pattern there. And then finally, I have a couple of cookie cutters. Again, there's nothing more cookie cutter than cookie cutters, right? They get very predictable shapes of your cookies. Again, I can be hit or miss with those. I realize you really have to freeze that dough. It's we're making Christmas cookies. Very important that you chill that dough, or else your tree is going to turn into a big, it's going to look more like a Christmas light bulb or something at the end of it. Okay. What do you guys want to add to this image? Some people that are high discipline. I mean, Francis, if you want to jump on here, you're number 3. Now, Catherine, you're at number 9. Tyler, you're sitting there at number 6. Justin, you're at 30, but I know that you've spent a lot of time with investigating this as well. And you've been on, our friend Simon Hurry's podcast and shared about this. Folks, what can we add? Let's see some hands. What can we add to this image of discipline? Yeah, Catherine, please.
The first thought that comes to mind is the Container Store. like things being organized, the cubes put, like, even in my kids' playroom, I have like cubes where things go, bins where things go. So that's kind of the first thing that comes to my mind.
The Container Store. Yes. Have you ever seen the show Tidying Up with Marie Kondo?
No, but I know her philosophy. Yeah.
Oh, it's like the high discipline, indulgent person. Like, it's just, she comes and she reorganizes your house. Everything has a place.
Yep.
I love it. It stresses me out when somebody that's visiting in the kindness of their heart does the dishes. Cause why? They put everything back in the wrong spot. And there's nothing that sets me off when I go to find a pot and I got to search. Okay. Thank you for that, Catherine. Tyler, what do you got, man?
Yeah, I would say if you work at a company, like a policy or procedure manual about how things are done at that company, so there's a lot of clarity. And then building on that, I would even say like the catechism is a really good thing because it's very clear. It has very concise rules and guidelines for what it means to live the Catholic faith. So yeah, those are the two things that came to mind.
I love that. I love that you brought that up. There's a book that sits on my shelf back here from Divine Mercy University. Has been putting it together over 20 years. It's the Catholic Christian meta model of the person. Why is that important? And the reason why they say it has to be a Catholic Christian meta model and not just a Christian meta model, because when you say Christian, there's a myriad of different theologies that are behind it. So you have lots of different variations. So it doesn't really get specific enough. And what they're trying to do is trying to really understand who the human person is from all these different facets of philosophy and psychology and the biological sciences. And they want to have a consistent theology. Well, you don't get more consistent than, like you just said there, Tyler, with the catechism. And it gives you that predictable touchstone that you can turn to. I'm going to bring on Justin, and then Francis, you're on deck.
Yeah, the two things. So it's 30 for me, but it's 3 for my wife, and we're all thankful for that. The list existing itself is the first and foremost thing in my mind, and then the conveyor belt, another image where one person does one thing, the next person does the next thing. They do that. And if everybody does their job, the thing comes out at the end perfect every single time. So,
yeah, my father worked at a distribution company that implemented lean manufacturing principles. And lean is like one of those things where everything has a process. One of the things that they would do at the end of the day was every single person had to put their workspace back in one way, so that when they started in the morning, they realized that 15 minutes of the day was just reorganizing the workspace. And so they just have everything has a place with discipline in order for things to run smoothly. Francis, what do you got?
The image that comes to my mind is when I come on to Slack, our Metanoia Slack, the day of our CCF skill session, and I see that Matt is leading, and there's a nice, neat, tidy agenda that's laid out with amounts of time for each, element of the session. And to me, that is just good for my heart. Like, that's discipline. I love having that in place.
Well, I mean, let's lean into that. Like, it's good for your heart. Why? What's the thought?
I know what to expect.
Okay.
And then so then I'm going into it. I remember that from my grade 6 classroom. My teacher at the beginning of the day would say an order of events. We're going to do math at this point, and then after recess, we're going to do this. And so it was like knowing what to expect. Okay.
And you find comfort in knowing what to expect.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's interesting. So the discipline you see here, they find a comfort in knowing what to expect. I know that there are some people, and perhaps there are people on this call, that don't enjoy knowing what to expect. In fact, they like the opposite. They enjoy the chaos. They thrive in the chaos. Like if you're higher ranger, you tend to thrive and almost say you thrive in the chaos. You just know how to manage it well. Or maybe your high adaptability, that relationship theme, or You can just kind of go with the flow of things, and it doesn't necessarily matter if you're on task or on agenda or you're deviating in some way. I know that I love to have the agenda, because if I'm sitting down, I want that time to produce some sort of outcome, some sort of result, whether it's a decision or it's a new process or a new policy that we've got, or it's an improvement. I want to be able to look back in my schedule and say at the end of, like, I used my time judiciously and well, and I've got proof, because we have these tangible outcomes, the new process, the product, the finished workbook, whatever it is that the worksheet, whatever we're working on. I want to be able to have that. Any other thoughts on discipline here before we move on? All right. Once, twice. Okay. So here's where I think the motivation lands. And again, I throw this up here. I open it up to any sort of thoughts, how this lands. Catherine, I'd love to hear from you. And Tyler, hear from you how this lands. But I think a motivation, so where the discipline talent seeks to rest, is a predictable production outcome. All right. So that predictability, just heard Francis talk about that. Certainly would love to hear your standpoint. But there's like, it's not just predictable, but I know what I'm going to get when I'm done with this. So in this case, Francis, like, I know the learning that I'm going to get when I'm done with this. I see the learning objectives when I'm done with this. How's this landing? I know when we build the way that we were able to build our certification program, and the way that my discipline contributed to Erin's ideation, she can come up with all these different drills. Where my discipline showed up was, what is each drill doing? What is the specific training standard that is being accomplished by that drill? Where does it fit? I loved it in the military environment, that task condition standard. Jane, I see your hands up here. How's this all landing? You're also a veteran.
Yes. And actually, it's funny because that's one of the things that I like. Oh, are you there? Sorry.
We got you. We got you covered, Jane. You're good. You're good. You didn't fly away.
I thrive on discipline, but I'm not disciplined myself. And it's one of those things that I mentioned, I would mention to other people in my previous workspace, because there were a number of people, and I didn't know about strengths, but I knew enough about myself and about my own personality and inclinations that I need to be around people that are disciplined, because I have achiever and arranger and strategy, which is where I use the discipline to find the easiest method. But my thought process are too fast. And so sometimes I can't be, like you said, oh my goodness, I remember there was a training, our boss wanted us to exactly have our spaces cleaned every single day before we left. And it would take me an extra 15, 20, like I would be the last person to leave because I'm just so chaotic. But when I'm around somebody that's more disciplined, I thrive. I want to know. I do. That's why I love the military. I want to know the standard. I know where we're going. I want to know the thing. And my sister says, I want to know the box so that I can jump out of it. I want to know where the rules are, and then I can decide to follow it or not.
Okay, so there's rules, there's structure. That's kind of some of the picture that we're saying. Like there's a box that I'm getting put in. And Jane, rather than feeling restricted, your experience of that is I thrive. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you're getting from the structure?
I think back, like I have a memory, my son's first grade teacher had a 3-ring binder, and she had it all organized for everyone. And it just gave me more time, and it gave me more expectation. Like Francis was saying, she knew what to expect. She knew the orderliness of what was going to happen. And that gave you a little bit less drama, if you will. And I really like that a predictable outcome, because then it's like, okay, I have the map. I laugh at, like, how did we even survive without GPSs? or whatever, like, takes me 10 hours to get to Dallas, and so I want that roadmap. I do want that roadmap. I want to know, okay, if I'm going to do this, this is what's going to happen. And I
Okay.
do that. I did that with schooling. I would backward plan, but then my life, then I would look up, and that's part of my frustration. I remember first time I went to a spiritual director, I was like, I set my goals A, B, C, D, and at the end of the day, I look at it and I'm doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm so frustrated. But I didn't know that's part of my nature. And part of I mean, that's also part of motherhood. I mean, just let's face it, motherhood.
Yes. Yes. Even Marie Kondo's house isn't so tidy anymore now that she's got a
Right?
couple of little ones.
Exactly.
Awesome. Jane, thanks so much. Catherine.
I was laughing because I saw that article and laughed when I saw that. The two things that came up to me with these thoughts, and Jane mentioned a lot of it, but is the managing expectation. So like the reason why this motivation is so big for me is because like managing expectations, both for myself and for other people. Right. Like, so there's not like, there's just a clear understanding. Right. But the other word that came up a lot is stability. So like that for me, the predictable production outcome, like there's a certain stability to that. That I can bring even to like my children. My kids are 6 and under, go to a Montessori school, and especially in that age range, like predictability and structure is very important so that they know where the bounds are. So it's just like what you're saying, Jane. So what they know where the bounds are so that there can be freedom within the bounds. So anyway, it's just like, I definitely resonate with his motivation, but for me, it's like underneath that too is the stability and the expectations. Those two words too are big.
Stability. Awesome. Okay. Tyler, what you got? Thanks, Catherine.
Yeah, I think as a soccer coach, I think looking back, I kind of wish my parents had put me with this specific strength, maybe in football or basketball, where I could actually have some control over the plays that are called, because a football coach can call plays, basketball coach can call timeout, call a play, whereas soccer, it's a 90-minute game where the coach really has to step back and sort of just watch it all unfold. And to like an innocent bystander, there's a lot of chaos and disarray, and sometimes it stresses me out on the sidelines because I really am not calling the play in this moment, and they have to decide. At the same time, I think what's really helped me, not only in the soccer piece, but in life really, is what are the consistent principles that you can apply to any matter of different scenarios in life, right? So on the soccer field, having that discipline and the predictable production outcome to say, when this person has the ball in this area of the field, this is what should happen. And that's my job to teach them that so that they can apply that on their own. Whereas if there weren't those principles, it's just kind of like a random game where the ball is being kicked everywhere. And so I think that where the heart of, in probably any sport, where the heart of that discipline has to come out is in training, is in practice, is to say, here's the principle, here's where you apply it, here's why you apply it, and then just trust at the end of the day that on the field, it'll lead to that predictable production outcome, which really is, a goal or stopping a goal or whatever it is. So I think as a coach, that really resonated with me, that the principle leads to this outcome, or at least it should. And if it doesn't, then that's where we go back to the training pitch and we review it again. So
that's a really helpful word, I think, that you're introducing there, Tyler, is that principle, like getting the, so what is a principle? Principle is something it's firm. It provide, because of its firmness, it's predictable in how, in the response you get, the outcome that you get when it's applied. And so even the image that was coming to mind, it blows me away. If you guys ever watch a football game and, it's moving so fast where the quarterback throws the ball and he knows based on where the linebackers are set up that the play is designed, that this ball that is being whipped at, 40 miles an hour, I don't know how fast they throw, is going to have a receiver that's there, and the receiver knows to turn around at a certain point. Like, they're just following the principles, but there's an execution that's taking place, and it's happening because it's happening. It's so disciplined. It can happen very fast. And you think about it, like that receiver is depending and can trust that quarterback is going to throw that ball at that time, at that speed, at that position for him to be able to turn around and catch it, and vice versa. That quarterback knows that guy's going to turn around before he's even made the cut. He knows that he's going to be there and he's going to find the ball that he's like. So you can see how the team dynamic, where because we have these principles, these discipline principles that are established, there's a certain freedom to move very quickly. In the military, we had a saying, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And I love that because if you start slow, you increase speed with proficiency. And then as you increase that speed with proficiency, and everybody is increasing at the same time, there's still that discipline doesn't necessarily go away. Okay. Awesome on this. Predictable production outcome. That's where we're seeing discipline desiring to land. Let's go to our Lexio. All right. So we're going to start pivoting over to where the part of the podcast where we're moving into how does this talent show up virtuously or viciously. Let's start with our scripture to get a little bit of information how we might show up virtuously with this. So I have Proverbs 21, verse 5. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to want. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to wants. Come, Holy Spirit, teach us how to live virtuously in our discipline. The first word that pops off for me as I read this is hasty, right? Haste makes waste. Discipline hates waste. I hate waste. My high discipline, I despise it. Wasted time, wasted resources, wasted energy. Can't stand the waste. So that hasty, again, it's the opposite of smooth. We're moving very quickly. We don't have any sort of plan. And what happens comes only to want. You don't accomplish. You don't end at the goal that your want is seeking. You just end in want. You don't actually arrive at the place that you're trying to get to. But the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance. It's not just arriving at the thing, but arriving at abundance. And if anybody's been watching the Chosen series, I just got done, spoiler alert, got done watching season 3 where they have the feeding of the 5,000. Everybody knows that one, that part's coming, right? You know the scripture, not really a spoiler. But there's that, and there's a moment where Thomas, who was there for the blessing of the water at Cana, the water turning to wine, looks up at Jesus and goes, this feels familiar. Something feels familiar here. And what happens? There's an abundance that's there. So the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance. How is this landing for each of you in terms of your discipline? And it's informing how our discipline ought to show up to lead to that place of abundance. One of the thoughts there is like, we need to get secure in our principles. And so I think, what are our principles? Where do we go to find our principles? We talked about our catechism. We talked about scripture. There's something that's this concrete touchstones, Christ himself, the cornerstone. That's just that we have a responsibility. If we're going to be truly diligent, we have to get grounded in those principles. Catherine, how's that landing for you?
Yeah, good. I think the two words that stick out to me are diligent and abundance. And because to focus on the fact that our goal is to be diligent, our goal isn't to be rule followers for the sake of following rules. And that can be, at least for me, that can be a tendency of like, but this is the rule, like follow the rule, just follow the rules, you know? But that the goal is diligence, and that the point of the diligence is, like you said, so there can be abundance. It's not that, like, for scrupulosity's sake, it's not to like check the box and say I followed the rule, which I'm high in achiever as well. So that plays into that. I'm also high in responsibility. So that all plays into that. But just to focus on that, like, I like the idea of diligence rather than, you know, like, I don't know, all I can think of is stick in the mud. Like, I don't want to be a stick in the mud, right? I don't want to I don't want to make people or ask people to follow the rules just for the sake of following the rules.
Right. And I saw one of the things you chatted in earlier was the reason behind the rules.
Yeah.
And so it's not like for us to just be rule followers, we can get very neo-Pharisaical at that point. Works of the law, those are the rules, but we don't necessarily know the spirit behind them and the intention behind them. And so, yes, well, that certainly kind of factors into our evaluation of where these things can go vicious when we leave behind the reason behind the rules. Thanks, Catherine. Tyler.
The image I had with the diligent and then the abundance is we have 5 kids, and so our son James is choleric and very driven, and he wants to do things right away. And I just imagine a family wanting to go to the beach, and let's say that I have an idea, let's go to the beach, and then all of a sudden, instead of preparing and being diligent for what do we actually need at the beach so that we actually have a fulfilling, abundant time, we all just got in the car and we went, and we forgot sunscreen, towels, bathing suits, and it would actually lead to want at the beach, and it'd be a miserable time. And so I just think about what are the steps when we have an idea or something like that, or we're coming up with systems, process, and an attention to order. Before we come up with those things that lead to abundance, what are those steps that we need to do in order to make sure that it actually is fulfilled? And so one of the things that I thought of, and this may be like the vicious side, Matt, is if you're an enforcer of rules, but you actually haven't gotten feedback on what the shared vision or the shared processes should be, and it's your thing, then it's going to lead to want. And so a diligent thing to do, in essence, is what's the shared vision that we all can come and kind of be aligned with, and then your discipline strength can come in and kind of enforce that. But being diligent to make sure that one of the things would be, in being diligent, would be getting that feedback and having it be a shared sort of vision, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. That shared vision, we talk about this a lot, as being what JP2 would call the foundations of a loving relationship. So we have a common good. 2 people have a common good that they're freely choosing together. That common good could also be a vision, could be what our day at the beach is going to look like, right? And so the disciplined person is going to say, okay, tell me about the day at the beach. And it's not just, we're going to the beach. It's going to be, hey, we're going to start out by, we're going to want to build some sandcastles. We're going to want to be able to have lunch at the beach at some point. We don't really want to be able to be buying stuff on the beach. Maybe we'll get some funnel cakes because they're awesome, right? And you can't resist that smell. Like I want to do some surfing. So I'm going to bring and all of a sudden it's like, okay, so now discipline can help really create a very clear vision. And then it knows what diligence looks like. But I hear you, Tyler, you're saying you need to get clarity of vision to inform what diligence looks like, or what the rules look like, or what the checklist looks like before you get there. And then when somebody you say, well, why are we spending all this time doing this? It's like, hey, you agreed to this vision. You want this vision, right? This vision minus the sunscreen, we don't arrive there. All right. We arrive at like screaming sunburned kids at the end of the beach trip. Okay. And then nobody wants to do it anymore. Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. Francis.
Yeah, the word that stuck out for me was the word surely. And I think I had like a little bit of skepticism around that, like how sure is sure, And I think that points to like, a little bit of that ungodly self-reliance that I see in myself sometimes, but kind of struggling when, as Tyler was saying before, like there is no perfect formula that can lead to the outcome that I'm looking for, whether like he was talking about the soccer field, and I think about parenting, like connecting that to what's my vision for my kids. And I want to put in this perfect formula to create this outcome. And how, just taking that, even that part about the principles, like giving those to our children so that they can hopefully like go on and live those out. But yeah, like lead surely, like how surely, Lord, like, what do you mean by that exactly? That's what stuck out to me there.
Okay. So you're identifying it hit surely, and then it's like, what do you mean? Like, so what's the feeling that's coming up when you hear that, or you see that word surely?
Yeah, I think skepticism, maybe.
Skepticism
Yeah.
Of what?
I guess of like the truth of that the diligence will surely lead to that abundance. And I guess too that I have to challenge myself on what does abundance look like.
Sure.
Like
Surely.
how I'm defining that. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Mhm.
You know what, Francis, might be uncovering a little bit of work here to do where it's just kind of like, is it really going to lead to abundance? There's a little bit of skepticism there, and
Yep.
and maybe lean into that a little bit. Beautiful. All right.
Mhm.
Thanks for sharing that, Sharon. Francis, excuse me. All right. We're going to jump into our slides here where we're talking about the virtuous and vicious side of things. And we always frame virtuous in terms of leading to interdependence, right? There's a recognition of the other's gifts and talents, where you fit in, you make space for other people, you see the other people, you allow yourself to be seen, and step into your zone of genius. Okay. And then the vicious side, where it goes independent, dependent, or codependent. So let's start with the virtuous side. Leads to interdependence. I help the team get on the same page and deliver on expectations that we promise. I see that as kind of a virtuous manifestation of discipline, getting people on the same page. Right. Tyler was just talking about all the things that you got to bring to the beach. What's the list look like? All right, let's get the team on the same page. All right, honey, you got the sunscreen. I got the sandwiches. Kids, you get your bathing suits. Right. And because we want to have this beautiful image of being on the beach, I help team get on the same page and deliver on expectations that we promise. I notice when you don't have, and that same page can often show up in like, these are all the incremental steps to achieving the outcome that we're looking at. So I know my strategic and my discipline will show up in breaking a process down into individual steps. I can see it in an instant, you guys. And I imagine people that are high strategic, high discipline also can like see it. And there's nothing overwhelming about it at all. I can see on my team, like when we're in a meeting where two people are talking and they say, I got it. And I know that they don't got it because they haven't actually had the conversations to bring about the true understanding. And I've given myself permission to step in there without judgment and just be like, okay, here's a couple of things that we can do to just clarify this a little bit more. All right. At what point are you going to be passing the project from this person to this point? What's it going to look like when you pass when the product is ready to be passed on from one person to the other? So, and I that's how I'm able to insert myself. I get them talking, they get on the same page, and we have fluid execution at that point. How's this landing for other people that are high discipline, or maybe you've got somebody on the team that you work with that is high discipline? How do you see it show up in a way that brings the team together on a common same sheet of music? Or are we good? Jane, I see you popping up. Let her go. Let's see how long she can realize before she's muted. Ah.
Okay. It's only the second day of giving up coffee.
You lack discipline. Clicking your mute
I
button
know.
off.
I
Number
lack
33.
focus. I lack focus. But that's one of the reasons why I thrive. I mean, I literally, in my mind, I literally have to link arms with someone that's disciplined. Like I look in the team and I'm like, oh, you're disciplined. I'm going to lock arms with you because you're going to help me become the best version of myself, because you're going to give me that playbook and, you know, that recipe. And then I can do what I need to do. But you need to write the recipe and you need to show me I can't write the recipe. Sometimes I can once I've become proficient and my input, my learner have gotten to the point, but especially when I'm new stuff. And maybe that's where it came from is, you know, being military, like you're always jumping into a new situation. So I'm like, tell me what to do and how to do it.
You can drill it.
But you can get so much more done when you're like, oh, everybody's on the same page and we know what to expect. Then there's not this backbiting and the bickering and the whatever. I love it.
Beautiful. Jane, thank you. Tyler, give us a soccer example, Tyler.
I will. Thanks. When I first got this job in 2017, I think that I had a lot of excitement and sort of imposed my vision, and keyword my vision, on the team with my purpose, things that I expected. And it's all fine, vision and purpose, all those things are good, but I think that it really led to the vicious side where a lot of it wasn't shared among the team or the staff. It was really my thing. And you could really see how that led to, results on the field that weren't very positive, and the culture maybe not being as positive, anywhere near as positive as it could be. And then a couple of years in, I realized, all of the things I was doing, I was using my discipline strength, and I was kind of bordering on the vicious side. We just said, we're going to kind of toss this culture, if you will, and we're just going to co-create it. And so we got a lot of feedback. Why do we exist? How do we behave? What do you want the program to be? What do we want the program to be? And when we got that, and we got clarity on that shared piece, what I was talking about earlier, literally from one year to the next, I mean, we increased our winning percentage by, I'm not a mathematician, but a lot. And I really think that it was just a result of that interdependence, right? The virtuous side, and creating the shared vision, and then with the shared vision, now enforcing those things that we all had come up with together. And every time we have short memories. Every time I'm like, all right, let's do this, and I fail to kind of get that feedback, it kind of goes that direction. But every time you invite people in and it becomes our thing as opposed to my thing, it's really simple, but it's like a night and day difference. So
that's an awesome illustrator. Awesome. Appreciate that, Tyler. Yeah, I'm starting to see how important that unifying vision is for discipline to really show up virtuously. Catherine, I'm going to bring you on here in a moment. Corey, I know you had a hand raised here. Of course, it applies. What we're talking about here applies beyond just teams. I know Gallup Strengths can kind of focus on team environment, but certainly it's any relationship that we're talking about here. I'm going to go through the vicious side. Catherine, I'll bring you on here as well after that to clean up for us. All right, so we've got the leading to independence. Tyler was already talking about that. So we have, and Catherine, you even spoke about this earlier, rigid adherence to procedures without consideration of others or the mission. So it's follow the rules. It's rules for the sake of rules, discipline for discipline's sake. But there's not really like an aim or a goal that's really defined or at least shared by others. We have an image of what the goal is in our head, but it stays very tight to our chest. And we don't want people futzing with it. We want it to be ours. Okay, so we can see how that goes independent. Leading to dependence. Dependence is also often where it's like, I need somebody else to do something in order for myself to do something or feel something. All right, and so here you see people need to follow your process in order for you to do your job, or maybe even in order for you to feel secure, right? That's kind of that dependent relationship. And then the codependence, or codependent relationships are when we're staying kind of shallow, but we're creating conditions for each of us to remain where we are. There's no real growth that's taking place in a codependent relationship. So I can see this, like you create your standard operating procedures without holding people accountable to follow them. That's kind of an example of what this looks like. So you crank out the manuals, you have all the processes, but again, you publish them, but then you never really hold people accountable to them. You never really have a plan for rolling them out. It's somewhat indulgent. I get to feel good in my discipline talent. Everybody else gets to feel good ignoring me, right? And it's this, there's no real growth that's taking place. Catherine, I want to bring you back in to share what you were going to share before, or even comment on how your discipline shows up.
Yeah, I was just thinking with regards to the spiritual life and how it's like easy to become, I don't know, easy is the right word, but to become vicious in your spiritual life through ungodly self-reliance. And Francis brought it up before, but like, and I'm just like tying it together with this unified vision. Like if we fail to have a unified vision with the Lord, then like we turn up vicious, you know? The other thing that comes to mind is like saying the right prayers, doing the right things, right? But maybe not having that communion with the Lord, right? I'm saying all the right things. I'm praying all my prayers. I'm doing the right novenas, you know, but I don't feel close to Jesus, right? And I've fallen victim to that in the past, where it's like, I'm doing all the right things, I'm following the right plan. But that spirit, right? Like that's that, like you were talking about the spirit of the law, like that unified vision with the Lord wasn't there, that openness to where he's taking me. And I think for me, sometimes it can be difficult, the concept of like faith of like, I want to know the plan, Jesus, like show me, 10 steps down the road, how this is gonna, come to fruition, why I'm doing this. And but like what the Lord calls us to is fidelity to like the step by step, so that's just kind of what came up to me with the vision, with the vicious side, with related to the spiritual life. And the other thing that I thought of with on the virtuous side is like cultivating that openness to the spirit. Like, so having this discipline and it is such, and I think there's so much beauty in being able to be a servant leader with that discipline. Like you said, like not coming in and being the dictator, not coming in and like having people to have to like, conform to our law, if you will, like the Pharisees, right? Like conform to the law. But to have that servant leader posture of like, I have this, I see this, I'm here to contribute this to help everyone. But then always having that openness to the Holy Spirit of like, yes, I'm given this gift. Like, how do you want me to give this gift to other people? Because I think, again, like being so, disciplined, sometimes you can have your plan and you can forget to like, let the Holy Spirit come in and change your plan because you can be so focused on what your vision was for things.
It's interesting. Kat, I'm looking at your other strengths here and pulling those up. Your number 1 connected is number 2 relator, 3 learner, 4 responsibility, 5 analytical, and then you get into restorative achiever, individualization, and discipline. So is it like we share a lot of this of the top 10, you and I. I think we share 9 of the top 10 of the same top 10, actually. Yeah. The only one is analytical, which is my 11. So like we are, we're close. We're very close. But I wonder here, just kind of thinking about what you're sharing, Catherine, like we're getting this, there's been a lot of talk on the shared vision that's there. And again, that clear conception of what the goal looks like is, I'm wondering, Tyler, I know you're high on the strategic thinking as well. If we're hearing almost like a lopsided, or we're just hearing through the lens of people that are lead with strategic thinking and their discipline of having that clear conception. I don't know if everybody has that clear conception of what winning looks like right off the bat. Justin, Francis, will come to you in a moment. Justin, I want to see if you have a comment on that or what you're thinking.
Yeah, so I think it's definitely important to remember that this is an executing theme. And so with that, discipline strives for, that consistent outcome in a sense over and over again. And that's what it rests in. It's not happy until the process that came out was efficient, effective, and so forth. And so, yeah, so when you mix in your strategic thinking, that gives you the ability to make that plan. But discipline's not so much about making the plan, it's about following the plan. So they may not need to discipline doesn't need to make its own plan. It just needs a plan to follow. It needs a routine to follow. That can come from someone else just as easily as from oneself. And so, thinking of someone who maybe doesn't have high strategic, maybe they lead with relation, but they have high discipline. They understand the people that are around them, and they're going to structure the environment so that those people are consistently getting what they need. Whether it's just making sure that the house is clean the way that other people know they like it, or that, if they're, high in influencing, maybe they're good at communication. They're going to set up their presentations and their seminars in a way that they know leads to that good flow of energy and communication every single time. So you may see that person present once, and when you see them present again, it will literally be the same presentation because they know that works. They know that's what gets the message out to the most people. They're not interested in being new and fresh and innovative every single time they speak until they decide they need to do something new, in which case they will look for a new process to follow with
Mhm.
that. But I think, one of the most, I think one of the simplest examples of discipline, in the faith is, people often ask, why do we make the sign of the cross with our right hand? When you say, how do you make the sign of the cross? It's always, you take your right hand and then you do it. And like, well, why the right hand? And, people will come up with all of these reasons, going back to, the left hand's evil, to Pope so-and-so said it, to whatever. But in the end, we do it because that's the way we do it. And if you want to know how to do it, it's this way. And that's the reason in and of itself. And in the end, that's really all that matters. And I think that's what discipline boiled down to understands, is that we need a way. Otherwise, we're going to just flail about. And yes, we could get there that way, but it's going to be very messy, very inefficient. And just think of what else we could have accomplished if we didn't have to flail around.
Justin, it's really helpful. And I think one of the really helpful things is that I feel very seen by is discipline doesn't have to come up with a plan. I know my strategic can come up with a plan, but so often I'm reading books that are giving me kind of the structure and the way forward. And then I'm just incorporating that in. So that's super helpful. Also, I thought about adding on to the podcast, like a theme song for every single one of the signature themes. And like you just said it, Justin, I was thinking about Montel Jordan. This is how we do it. Montel Jordan. Francis, what do you got?
That's so good.
I'm glad you laughed.
Yeah. I was just thinking in terms of family life again. My family, we go to my husband's parents' place on like one night of the week, we go for dinner or whatever. And I was thinking of how my discipline showed up, like in terms of dependence. So it's my husband's parents' house. So I'm like, okay, we're at your parents' house. So you make the plan and like you follow through, like kind of giving him the lead on that. But then that's not his strength, is the discipline part. And so then now it would just be bananas, like frazzled. And we've got 4 kids under 6 and, just crazy. And so then kind of getting on the same page was like, and again, it's true that it didn't matter so much to me, like who comes up with the plan. Like it could be him, but I just need there to be a plan. And so, now when we roll up there, we talk with our girls about our last name's Burton. So we're like, how are we going to be the Burton band of blessing? And so we're just talking about these different things that we're going to do. And for me, my number one strength is relator. So the motivation is like, if we take care of these things efficiently, getting Jamie's on after supper and these, practical things, then there's more time for communication and chatting with his parents and having these good conversations. So yeah, I've just seen that play out there where it's like, we just need to know what the steps are going to be. We're all on that same page, and then we can, like I said, with my goal, it's more shared time together. So yeah, I've seen it in action in that way.
Awesome. Francis, thank you very, very much here. And as my discipline is kicking in, as I see it's 1:30 right now. And so we need to start to move into our wrap up. So we'll come to our final slide here where we explore perhaps the mindsets. Again, folks, the thoughts that we think will incline us to feel certain ways and then act certain ways. And so when we're acting viciously, we want to get curious about the thoughts that are behind them. So we're exploring, what does that virtuous mindset look like? Here's just one thought that I put out here. My stability, for the person with discipline, my stability serves as the guardrails for innovation. All right, because where discipline can often get so rigid, it can get rigid is when it actually confines the work of the Holy Spirit. All right, and we can see that in the work in the Pharisees, the work of the law. It's just there's only it's the actions that we do and that we have to follow. We have to do them perfectly in order to justify ourselves. But the Holy Spirit is not confined to any sort of rule book that we would set. And so I've even had experiences as a business owner being that really wants to kind of structure and stabilize, to be not hold on so tight that I strangle my own child, right? And there needs to be a freedom. And I find that even where Erin, who's number 34 discipline, but she's number 3 ideation, shows up, is that I will often, especially if she's doing work right now that will get passed to somebody else, what I will do, knowing how the other person needs to receive it in order to do their part, I will build Erin a template that she fills out. And so I lend my structure and my discipline, which just serves as guardrails for her innovative brilliance and creativity to live within that space. And then it easily passes off to the next person. I didn't do that recently. I just wanted to see what happened. And I got a lesson in insanity. Okay. And so it's understanding of just, again, now I receive that spot on the team versus resenting that I have to do that spot. No, this is my contribution. Vicious mindsets. Montel Jordan, this is how we do it. That could lead to independence. Dependence. I can do my job. I can't do my job if you don't do yours. All right. So where there's this abdication of responsibility based on what somebody else is doing, whether they're following the process or not. And it's just like, I can't do my job, or I can't be happy or something unless you change and follow the process. And then finally, the thought with the codependence, remember the example, creating SOPs that nobody else has to follow. The process does the work. No, folks, like discipline, you got to, in the military, we call putting the S in BAMSIS, the troops leading in steps. That S stands for supervision. Discipline always requires there being a keeper of the discipline. And that's what I would say the person with a high discipline talent can do well, is they can be a keeper of that discipline. But again, how do we keep the discipline without sacrificing the reason behind the rules? So we're not just a bunch of rigid people. Okay. Any closing thoughts as we open this up? Wrap up here. Closing thoughts. All right. We're towards the end here. Folks, thank you so much for being a part of this call. If you're listening in, we do these calls in our Metanoia Catholic Academy. So we got some people that are here that are members of our academy. We have people that are in our coach training programs. We have our Catholic coaching certification program. Check it out. The world needs more well-formed formators, and that's what we aim to do here at Metanoia Catholic, to stand up amazing formators, amazing Catholic coaches to go and accompany people and do it confidently and competently. So check us out at CatholicCoaching.com. You want to learn how to join these calls, you can join the Metanoia Catholic Academy. It's our monthly membership where you get group coaching and you get access to calls like this, and you get to interact with a bunch of amazing growth-minded Catholics as well that love personal development and growing and bringing the kingdom of God on earth as it is in heaven by the grace of God. But pray for us here over at Metanoia Catholic. We are praying for you and hope to see you in the academy one of these days. Blessings.